The Brandon Peters Show may contain explicit language and detailed plot points. For more information on the show, stay tuned to the end of the episode. And now, here's Brandon.
Welcome to Old Space Show. I'm Brandon, and riding shotgun with me is Tony.
Hi, everybody. Excited to be riding shotgun once again here. Yeah.
Yep. I don't like backseat drivers, so you ride shotgun.
Absolutely not.
And you are not Miss Daisy. So this Old Space Show series will follow the exploits of a man and his car, the first season of Knight Rider. Today we are here to discuss the 5th episode. Bear with me. It's a tongue twister. Slammin Sammy's Stunt Show Spectacular.
Oh, yes. The onomatopoeia is strong with this one. Woo-wee. Michael and Kit join a stunt show which a wealthy banker is trying to force out of business. It doesn't take long for them to become the main attraction, even if Kit has to face the undignified distinction of being decorated all over with stars.
All right. This one's directed by Bruce Bilson. He has done like classics of TV from like Bewitched and Get Smart through to like here in the 80s, Simon and Simon, Scarecrow, Mrs. King. And of course, he touched on MASH. This might be our first MASH director I've ever had on HBO. We are Old Space Show. We are OSS, not HBO. But yeah, so I that was a title. I'm like, oh, I don't think we've had, or Bewitched too. I don't think we've had a director of that. We've had Get Smart writers and directors and stuff like that. But this is the first time I think MASH has popped up on an Old Space Show thing. This one is written by Paul Edwards and John Allen Schwartz, and stars David Hasselhoff, Edward Mulhare, Patricia McPherson is actually in this episode, William Daniels, Eddie Firestone, Susan Case, Phil Coccialetti, Mark Alamo, and Lynn McCarthy. This one, I noted one of the writers goes on to watch, he probably did, but he wrote for like Baywatch Nights. So that was kind of an interesting thing. And he wrote like Fall Guy, 21 Jump Street, and Quincy episodes. Here's a weird one though. The Schwartz guy who wrote it, he directed Faces of Death 1 through 6.
Wow.
Do you remember those?
Yeah, absolutely.
So
that was a deep cut.
Those were a VHS store staple where it was like this thing for kids listening to Old Space Show. There was these VHS tapes that were like, hey, do you want to watch people die and bad shit happen to people that's real? And you'd be like, oh man, yeah, Mike. It was like a dare thing to get at the rental store. So I don't think anyone bought Faces of Death, but they're all, I think they're like fake, or they were like news footage from like other countries that were a bit more violent. But it directed, like, that's, you don't direct Faces of Death, but okay,
right.
But yeah, so they were like little dare things. They kept coming out with them, and they'd be supplanted by things like, you know, backyard wrestling and things like that in the back in the day with the weird things and the Jerry Springer tapes. But Faces of Death, that was one of the like first, you know, in the era of like the 80s and early 90s of like, what do we do with this format? Like, and people trying out weird stuff, like, you know, workout tapes and just all sorts of oddities. But Faces of Death was a staple, and this is crazy that here he is writing for Knight Rider.
It's wacky. Yeah, it was like the original, not the original, but yeah, like of the 80s and 90s, like the pseudo snuff show, for lack of a better term. So it was it was one of those things, like it was almost like a badge of honor for the, you know, for the adolescents to make sure that they saw one of them, and could sneak in, rent one, and spend your weekend watching it over and over and getting creeped out by it. So
yeah, well, and none of them ever lived up to the playground talk of them. Like, well,
No.
there's this one where this like demon shoots up out of a Ouija board and this guy like gets his head taken off. It's crazy. And then you run it and it's just like, hey, we are here at the crime scene and oh my gosh, there's people who have been shot and killed. Like, it's like, that's it. I was like, all right. But so anyways, yes, that's a nice little deep cut throwback there. So this one, we get I feel like this episode overall is like, well, let's keep doing cool car shit. That's what we got right now.
Yep,
So
just like we
have one
absolutely.
around a stunt show. What
That's
better
right.
thing to
Just
do?
yep. Just like we talked about in last episode. Last episode was, bikers and you got to have something car centric. And this one, yeah,
Mhm.
the absolute thinnest of rationales. I'm pretty sure Devin's like, oh, it's a friend of the foundation who owns this stunt show, and I need you to
Right.
go look at. I'm like, no, it's not. Like this vague international foundation. No,
What
is not friends
what
with the stunt show owner.
what benefit is this connection? Like what benefit? I'd say like, well, he used to be a wheelman for us during this time, and he's retired, and he has this, and he needs our help. We owe him. Like, no, it's just like, oh,
Right.
he's got a buddy. He's got this like little show where he does shit.
Yes.
And Devin though, man, his office is like super 80s Texas oil tycoon. Like, wow.
100%. 100%. So it's interesting because this episode kind of starts the vibe of like they're gonna meet in person now. Like it used to be more of like a phone conversation thing, and now they either meet in the office or they meet over a meal somewhere at a restaurant. So Michael and Devin get the chance to get together. But yeah, his office at the Knight Foundation is
And is he
Devin,
playing golf
Devin,
in this one in there too?
Yes,
Like it's all
yeah.
stereotypical.
Oh yes, 100%. Yeah, Devin's doing all right, but for himself there in his classic 80s leader
Right.
style.
Guy watching back at headquarters. And we also Michael and Kit, we get a good Star Trek line from Kit here early on with the I'm a computer, not a psychic.
That's right. We actually get, so weirdly, we get a lot of Star Trek. The other Star Trek reference is more of a deep cut, more of an old space show deep cut, because you have Marco Lamo in this episode playing one of the bad guys, like middleman crony, but he'll go on to infamously play one of the best Star Trek bad guys of all time, Gul Dukat, in Star Trek Deep Space Nine. So it's very cool to see him. Like as soon as I saw his name in the credits, I'm like, oh, am I gonna recognize him without the Cardassian makeup? And sure enough, I mean, as soon as you see him in the stands with his little grimace, you're like, oh, there he is. There's my guy. So
exactly, yeah. Oh, Gul Dukat, so good. One of the best Trek villains of all time.
Yeah.
I mean, people could argue of the best. Yeah. Like, oh yeah, I want to talk about Deep Space Nine now. Anyways, we're on Night Ride.
Save it for the future one.
Yeah. So that would be the Star Trek to do because it might be the best one. Some argue. So we do get Bonnie back this episode. She's basically being our Kit mechanic. She hangs out in the semi truck to work on him, and I feel like they're here in this episode. They're trying to craft a will they won't they with her and Michael. Like
a little bit, yeah.
That wasn't in the other episodes that she's been in.
Yeah. It's very heavily, and interestingly, like, yeah, so it starts, in the previous episodes, it definitely feels like it's just another one of Michael. It's just Michael being Michael, right? Like any skirt he comes across, he's gonna give it a go, right? But this is where it maybe starts. The Bonnie's maybe giving a little interest to him back as well. So interesting to kind of see those seeds planted in the one scene every episode that Bonnie gets.
Right, and I'm really liking Patricia McPherson here and stuff. And I've looked. She doesn't. Her career's not really much. This is like the biggest thing she does is Knight Rider.
Yeah.
And I know next season they speaking of Star Trek, they Gates McFaddened her, and then only to have to bring her back because people were like, "Why the hell did you do that? Like, what was the point?"
Mistake.
So they will do that. So it's just really interesting that she didn't really, I don't know, go anywhere from here, because I think she's got an interesting presence that I like here. And I mean, she's easy on the eyes too. That always helps, especially in the 80s. But Yeah, so the plot here is there's a stunt show having problems getting pressured, and the guy's basically like, I'm not shutting down. He does this stunt with a car that he blindfolds himself, and has got a son who's hungry to take over for his dad, and a daughter that is kind of the mediator there with things. But Michael goes to befriend it after an incident occurs because some mysterious figure, couldn't be the random guy that works for them, the creeper Mario, don't know about him, siphons gas from his stunt car from the container labeled gasoline in really big letters, which I'm like, I can figure what they're doing here. It's
Right. They wanted to, leave nothing to the imagination there. So yeah, it's like, what's he doing? Like, and of all the things you could do to the car, just to take out enough gas that he would run out of gas. Like
at that
again, I'm not
perfect time. At that
right.
perfect time, that would yeah.
Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah, and it's funny because like now, so the shadowy figure who obviously is very clear as Mario. Like it becomes clear.
At
Like
any point did you think it wasn't going to be Mario?
no,
Because I like right from the get go, I'm like, yeah, that's the guy. That's the figure.
so it's even worse when you're rewatching it on streaming because I tend to watch everything with closed caption just because I do. And literally halfway through his skeevy scenes, it starts to label like when he's in the car talking to Mark Alemo and he's all in shadows and you're still not sure who it is. It says Mario, and then as he speaks.
They're like, well, no, we're not fooling anybody. Wow. Oh my gosh. Oh, that's good. Yeah, so the car goes into flames because he's jumping through a flaming hoop and over cars, but like it didn't blow up. So I'm like, nice restraint, Knight Rider. Nice restraint.
Well, it's
but they had to let the guy live.
Why would it blow up? Why would it even go into flames? Because clearly it's out of gas. What's flammable in there right now?
Right. True. Yeah, it is the little leftover gases. One thing I want to bring up that we haven't talked about yet with the show is I love the little like going to commercial freeze frames and transparency screens. So like in a freeze frame, it'll move to the smaller square and have some like wallpaper background of like Kit or something.
Yeah, the only way it could be better is if the square it freezes to, like it did the classic like DVD thing, like bounced around, bounced from corner to corner.
Screensaver. Oh yeah, that would be funny.
That would be amazing. Yeah, that's so it's so fun to watch that. This is one. I mean, they just like the whole show just kind of it just has that nostalgic like it's so chintzy, but you love it. Like again, I'm doing my rewatch on streaming service, and so when the episode starts and the theme song comes on and the little skip intro button comes on, I'm like, if there's any old show that you are not skipping the intro of, it's this badass theme song. I'm like, nobody better be skipping this intro.
It should be locked out. It should be locked out.
Right.
So basically here, Michael wants to take over. He's like, comes here like, hey, Mav magically showed up at this time with the guy injured. And he wants to do the big trick, but the guy's like, you could never do it. And he's like, I can do it, please. And during this time, like the saboteur Mario tries to like sabotage Kit. Like with no Mario, it's not going to happen. And so Michael decks out like Kit with stars on him. And Kit says, I fail to see how these stars enhance my capabilities. But Michael's like, either you get the stars or get painted red, white, and blue like these other cars. And you're like, keep pasting, Michael, keep pasting.
Yeah, you get a lot of, we're really settling into that kind of back and forth, buddy cop, mismatch pair type of vibe they're going for. So yeah, it's fun. And I think it helps too that obviously Kit has a very, he's got that British tone, he's supposed to be very like stuffy official computer type of vibe,
logic,
right?
Yeah.
Which is funny because he makes some of the funniest, like chinziest jokes in the entire episode, every episode.
Oh, for sure. I do. So Michael has a uniform and it's got like an MK logo all over his. I'm like, did you have this already from something else? Like,
so funny.
You were like some FBI guy before this. Like, where'd you have the Michael Knight attire like laying around? So like, and the sabotage guy wants to like poach Michael from this show, and he's like, no. and they're like, okay, we're gonna take down Michael. UC has an accident, a real for real showstopper. Dun dun dun.
Oh, cut to the box commercial.
If night goes, the show goes. If the show goes, you get your money. Like, that's so good.
Oh goodness.
And they call. Oh, I love the announcer guy calls him Cat.
Cat. Yes, that's right.
Gets pissed about it. So their plot of this is to drug Michael before the stunt happens. And so, I did notice this. Michael has to give Kit power to drive on his own through the rest of the stunt. But when Kit does the stunt, do you notice we never see him land?
Yes, yeah, because yes, you can tell because both times you can see, yeah, we never see the landing, but you can see the Trans Am is coming down at this atrocious looking
It's
angle. Like, oh, he's gonna lose his whole front, 100%. Absolutely.
Like, how many takes before they just said, we'll just cut it right there?
Yep.
They didn't even film like an insert of just a perfect land because it probably would have looked too clunky. So yeah, Michael chasing Mario is kind of a cool in one shot. There's like a cool shot of it that happens there. I was like, oh, that's neat. That works.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting how they go. Yeah, kind of go around and underneath the because that's when they're underneath the stands and yeah, like it's a very interesting. I give all credit in the world to the cinematography and the stunt team because
it's
they really
still looking big.
A game, 100%.
Yeah, this looks 100%. This looks like it's not quite movies, but it's too good for TV almost at this time. Like it's
sure
it works. And so Michael ends up getting a confession out of them by recording on the Kit Watch, which you mentioned showed up last episode.
That's
so
right.
It's being used in other ways, and they've got them. We can continue doing the stunt show, which the closing scene is in the semi again, where Bonnie's fixing Kit's damage and removes the decals, but Sammy can't drive, and that stunt show needs to go on. So Kit and Michael are going to have to do the show for the next 3 weeks. And Michael says, why don't you and Bon stop by and check out our act? And then Kit starts suggesting some like crazy stunts, which open the okay, you guys can do this, Bonnie and Devin. But like, that's, yeah, kind of funny. But Bon, I wonder if that's going to stick at all.
It's an interesting, like I said, this is definitely the first episode where you feel that kind of shift of like Bonnie is more than just. I don't know. Maybe the writers wanted to make sure she wasn't confused with like the eye candy of the week and things like that. And so they were maybe trying to give her a little bit more like character depth in terms of like how she could respond to them and things like that. So yeah, and this may be the this is unsubstantiated or unconfirmed, but this may be the first episode in order where she gets more than one scene of the entire episode.
Yeah. I mean, she's there. I mean, obviously she's probably shoots 4 episodes at a time on one set because she's not left that part. But I thought this was kind of a dumb episode, but I liked it a bit. Like it was kind of dumb, but like I enjoyed what it was doing. It wasn't trying to be much, and it was just giving some car stunts, some like I thought some of the stuff that they were trying to fool us on was like funny, entertaining in a bit.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's okay. I think for this show in particular, I mean, like if you're establishing right out of the gate that the stakes on this one are relatively lower. Like I don't think every week Michael should have to like, save the world or like topple the big evil corporation. Like, like it's okay if something, that's just a smaller thing to say. Like I think it sets expectations, and yeah, I enjoyed like watching like the cars. I'm always fascinated by like car shows and stunts because I'm not a heavy car guy, but like seeing a car get up on its 2 wheels on its side, like I'm like, how do they do that? Like that's kind of cool. So
right. And I think this is kind of a nice little time capsule of like an episode like this. And I think you'd only see this as a part of a TV show from like the mid to late 70s to the early 80s. Like, not that these kind of like stunt shows or something like don't exist anymore, but to like put it as a focal point or like to have your action show like focus a whole episode around it as if it's like some sort of big sort of relevancy that seemed to be commonplace for like I could see like Captain America on that TV show stopping by and having an
Yeah.
episode surrounding like this, like but I don't, like after like it's only in this little period of time where this had been like somewhere we're like, oh, we'll stick an episode during this.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, while I was watching it, I was like, maybe like is Evel Knievel going to show up and guest star? But I bet at that point he was too big to do something like that.
Yeah.
Like he was too cool for school at that point.
Yeah.
So
you have to sell for Super Dave.
That's right.
Point, maybe. But yeah, so no, I'm enjoying what they're bringing every week. They've all felt quite different. They've managed to do different car things despite being handcuffed to like, well, we got to figure something out with these cars. They've done different kinds of action, different kinds of stunts, or utilized it in ways that feel relevant and less shoehorned in. So it's actually, granted, 22 episodes is a long way to keep that going, but
you're right. Yeah,
all.
I think I think some of the biggest concern, maybe again, especially looking back at it from 2022, where I talk to my car daily and it talks back and things like that. Like, it's one of those things. It's like, oh, this is going to be a one-trick pony, but they're riding the pony very effectively. And I think it helps that Kit is developing. It feels like he's developing kind of a personality along the way too, so yeah, I definitely I think it's they're doing a great job. It's like I said in I think our first episode, it's just as engaging to me now as I remember it being back when I first watched it, which is a huge testament to what they've created. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, totally agree. But Tony, for now, let's shift gears to look on toward the sunset. Before we hit the horizon, where can people find you?
Yeah, come hang out with me. I am the senior editor at sciencefiction.com. So you can wander over that way and we can talk movies and TV shows and all sorts of good stuff. Anywhere on the social medias, you can find me at the ever original at Tony Schaab.
All right. Hashtag Wham Slam. Thank you, Sam. All right. And I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Brand4QHD. We're going to work on whitesoblue.com. That Tim Burton retrospective continues with part 6 on Monday with special guest Sabina Graves from IO9 and Gizmodo. And we'll be right back here next Wednesday for another Knight Rider adventure, but from old space.
Yes. Brandon and Tony, not so lone crusaders in a dangerous world. The world of Old Space Show.
Thank you for listening. The Brandon Peters Show is a Creative Zombie Studios production. Produced by Brad Shoemaker and Brandon Peters. Written and edited by Brandon Peters. Announcer vocals by Jessica Alsman. Theme song by Metavari. Web design and show art by Brad Shoemaker with Brandon Peters. All music and clips featured in the episode are property of their respective studios and no infringement is intended. Additional information on this and other episodes at BrandonPetersShow.com. For any inquiries, press opportunities, or sponsorship, contact mail at BrandonPetersShow.com. The show is available on Apple Music, Spotify, or anywhere podcasts are found.